Hello guys and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to be completing another tag, and I think tags are just a really fun way to categorise and showcase a nice selection of fragrances. So I'm going to be showcasing all my black perfume bottles because of course it is Beautiful Black Bottles perfume tag. So before we get stuck in, I just want to give a huge shout out and a big thank you to Scott over at the channel The Centurion. He's a Centurion by name and by nature. He's like this loyal protector of his friends in Fragcom. He's so genuine, he's such a gentleman, and he brings all that into his fantastic fragrance reviews along with his green screen, which gives that perfect aesthetical backdrop, which I really enjoy, and I'm sure it takes a lot of effort. So all I'm saying is, if you haven't already, please head on over to the Centurion, check him out, show him a ton of support because he really deserves it. He's a jolly smashing chap, frankly. Okay, so let's get into this video. So what I'm going to do today, because we're nearing Halloween, I've decided to make my Black Beautiful Bottle tag into a Halloween edition. So in light of that, or in dark of that, I think a change of decoration is in order. And to further add to this Halloween edition, I'm also going to match a character to each of my fragrances. I don't watch a lot of Halloween films. I don't like gore and blood and all that kind of stuff. I love my fantasy, my fiction and my film. So I'm going to just include a ton of characters which I think best match each fragrance. So let's kick things off with the first fragrance here. This is one of my favourite fragrances, and it is Black Rain by Renier. It is a clear bottle, but we have a black lid, we have a black label. It is called Black Rain. It's a black bottle. And I'm going to pair this to Brienne from Game of Thrones. I've done that once before on a video that I did called Scent My Ride, which was based around the fragrance I would give my car. I also call my car Brienne, so that is really where we link all these three aspects, but forget the car. Now Brienne is actually my favourite character from Game of Thrones. She's a strong, fierce, not to be messed with, kick-ass lady, and she can beat anyone in battle. Now, like Brienne, Black Rain is fierce and strong in its introduction. It has a really strong, sharp note of leather, which really comes at you. But in the heart, there's this beautiful violet and rose, which starts to open out, which softens that opening. As it settles down with this orange blossom and chamomile, you get more of a true identity that's calming, relaxed, and very composed. It still echoes that strength and fierceness from that strong leather opening, that kind of tender heart from the rose and the violet, because in her heart she is a knight. She fights like a knight, she has the honour of a knight, she never breaks an oath, and her oath keeping is what gets her there in the end. So that is Black Rain for the very knightly Brienne. So next up we have Noir Dinoir from Tom Ford, one of his more notorious and more popular fragrances, and I often refer to this as being a very gothic fragrance, and I have also paired this before to Dracula, and more specifically Bram Stoker's Dracula, that was played of course by Gary Oldman. But you could pair this to any vampirish or vampirish character because it is the perfect one to pair because of its gothic nature. It is a rose at heart, but I don't think this comes off as a particularly rosy fragrance. It is very much dominated by notes of patchouli and truffle, and I think there's chocolate in here. I can't remember if it's listed or not, but it has that musky, dark, earthy quality, and the truffle really gives it this. And you can imagine Dracula or any vampire smelling musky and earthy and dark and a bit dusty, luring you in with roses and chocolate and probably red wine, because there's a red wine scent in here as well as a nuance that gives you this slightly sort of wine tannin sharpness, just slight, but it just adds to that whole decadence and that opulence of what it actually is, a very romantic but very gothic scent. This is the scent of cold nights and candle lights and a deep red velvety rose left in your room by Dracula. Let's move on to the next one. So next up we have this beautiful bottle from Lolita Lempicka. It is whimsical, it's wicked, and it suits one person, and that is Maleficent. So this is Eau de Minuit, which I think basically means midnight fragrance. And if you've smelt the Eau de Parfum, the rich, licoricey, deep, violety iris scent, very similar, but it has more of a musky, less licorice tone. Yeah, it's not as bright and playful as the Eau de Parfum. There's this smoothness from like a sandalwood, I think they're sandalwood, and it has much more depth and much more darkness in its heart. And the sweetness from licorice, it's more like treacle. There's something thicker but smoother. It's so Maleficent. It's exactly the kind of thing you can imagine her picking up from her mystical woods and just smelling like Lolita Lempicka midnight fragrance. It's woody, it's treacly and witchy, and I absolutely adore this fragrance and this bottle. So you can get a better view. See how beautiful it is. So that is Lolita Lempicka Eau Minuit, or Midnight Fragrance. Let's next enter the world of Harry Potter. Another one from Tom Ford, but I haven't got a bottle of it, unfortunately. I've only got a decant. And it is called Black Violet. This is another discontinued one. So if we've got a decant, is actually really lucky. So Black Violet, I'm going to compare to the infamous Severus Snape, played by, of course, the absolutely magnificent Alan Rickman, the late Alan Rickman. Now, Oud Violet is probably the deepest, darkest, most mysterious violet fragrance I've ever smelt. To me, it smells like black diesel glooping along a woodland floor, smothering violets as it kind of flows through. It's so dark and rich, but like fumes, like diesel fumes. I don't really know where that comes from, because it's in fact woody and mossy and fruity. Those are the notes along with the violet. So the reason I've compared this to that exceptionally skilled potion master that is, of course, Severus Snape, smells like one of his potions bubbling up. If you can imagine this black gloopy liquid that's bubbling, conjuring up a potion from the dark arts. Snape is known to be dark and brooding, moody and cold, much like this fragrance. But in here, a little bit of softness from that violet, a bit of lightness of the fruits that are in here, which just give a nod to the fact that he is in fact a good person. Through all that darkness, there is in fact something good lurking within. So that is Tom Ford's Black Violet. The candle seems to have gone out. I hadn't even realised. Let's just reignite it. This fragrance is one by Elizabeth and James, and it is Nirvana Black. And the Nirvana Black has just 3 notes: it's violet, sandalwood, and vanilla. Now, that doesn't sound like it's particularly a scary and dark fragrance, but it actually is quite deep, dark. But because it is simple, it has no hidden depths, no development. And the person I'm going to compare this fragrance to, yet again from Harry Potter, this time is Bellatrix Lestrange, a loyal Death Eater, Lord Voldemort's most loyal follower. So Bellatrix is pretty feisty, she's pretty aggressive, cold-hearted, and probably a little bit deranged, to be honest. And she's played beautifully by Helen Bonham Carter. And the reason this fragrance is suited to her is because it is dark. It is quite cold-leaning, very musky, and it's actually a dark violet, a little bit like Black Violet from Tom Ford. It's quite a dark violet scent, but it's not got any change. It has no hidden depths. There's nothing sweet in here, and it does lean quite cold. It's something I wear at night. It's a nighttime scent. But in all honesty, this is a very pleasant fragrance. It's not... I'm sure Bellatrix smells a lot worse than this fragrance, but what cements this as being a Bellatrix Lestrange kind of fragrance is that it's rough and prickly and pretty edgy. Nirvana Black for Bellatrix Lestrange. So next is a beautiful black bottle from the house of Parfums de Manle, and this is Athalia. Now Athalia is an iris heavy fragrance, almost fizzy. It's very simple, it's not complex. It's a kind of dazzling but also quite composed, light, powdery fragrance with a hint of something vintage. And I always say this reminds me of the rain. It smells like the air when it's about to rain, or after it's just rained. It is actually quite mysterious. It's a bit sexy. And it takes itself very seriously without really grabbing too much attention. I think this really suits the vampire Celine from the film Underworld. Played by the gorgeous Kate Beckinsale, Celine is a very serious, very independent, slightly moody vampire, very focused on her dutiful patrol to kick ass and wipe out the world of lichens. Depicted most of the time in rain, at night, looking very glamorous in a tight-fitting catsuit. I think both that image and her character really matches the scent of Athalia. So the next fragrance to me stands out as being the one that is the most opulent, gothic and romantic. And that is Oud Satin Mood by Maison Francis Kurkdjian. This is a fragrance that I've often spoke about as being very gothic, very romantic, very dark, very rich, most certainly opulent. And there's really only one character I think worthy of pulling this fragrance off. It is the ultimate femme fatale, and that is Morticia Addams, portrayed by Angelica Houston. And she really brings that character to life with all that, you know, that edge, the allure, and so much presence, tightly fitting velvet dress. She's just the ultimate femme fatale, and that's how I think of this opulent, deep, dark, velvety fragrance. It's such a powerful rose and oud style fragrance. It is so velvety and powdery, depth from oud, which brings a slightly medicinal edge, but it wraps itself around the most big, beautiful, sweet red rose, and also the powdery violet, which adds a touch of whimsy. It's so luxurious, it's incredibly intoxicating, and it is Oud Satin Mood by Maison Francis Kurkdjian. Now my next two bottles are two beautiful offerings from the indie house of Tessa Williams. She's created some really beautiful candles and room sprays, but also she's got two lines of fragrances, and one is her Elementals line, and the other is a line of fragrances that includes one called Faith. And this is Faith. And it actually centres itself around tea, possibly even Earl Grey, because it's a sort of slightly fruity, slightly floral style tea. Without focusing on the notes, this is a smoky, powdery, almost ghost-like fragrance. It's like this elusive ghost-like cloud, ghostly veil, or a soft floral fog. This really makes me think of is The Corpse Bride, a really beautiful animation created by Tim Burton in that true Tim Burton style. The only colours in the entire film are pretty much what you see on this bottle: greys, smoky blues and whites and blacks. So Emily, who is the Corpse Bride, is a very tragic figure. She was killed on her wedding night. This ghost of a bride, partly skeletal, partly rotting, and obviously still in her bridal gown and her bridal veil, all getting rather shabby and ripped and grey and worn. But she's incredibly sweet, and she still dreams of being married. Beautiful animation, it really is. But this is the scent of Emily, because although it's ghostly and smoky, it's powdery in a very modern way, and slightly fruity sweetness. It's such a relaxing scent. So that is Faith by Tessa Williams. And the next Tessa Williams fragrance I'm going to talk about is from her Elementals line, and it is in fact Water. Now this was a really hard one for me to find a character for. Not really many water related characters that would suit this, not in a Halloween style. It's so bright, fresh and relaxing and watery and oceanic and aquatic. I have found one, and it's a character I really love from a film I really love, and that is Hellboy, and the character is Abe Sapien. So Abe Sapien is an amphibious man. He's very capable, he's very clever, and he's Hellboy's sidekick. He has a very tender heart. He's very gentle, he's very sympathetic, very kind and protective. He's also incredibly clever. He's got a very scientific mind. Really in no way dark, edgy or scary. It reminds me of him because of its serenity, relaxing and calming. It kind of transports you to the ocean. Yeah, it's a really calming presence, much like Abe Sapien. But of course it isn't aquatic fragrance, so it is very fresh. There are some white florals in here. There's some citruses. Also a lovely amount of saltiness in here. It's a beautifully balanced fragrance. So not scary or Halloween-like at all, but I'm going to match it to Abe Sapien, who is a very beautiful character. So the next from Tom Ford is Vani Fertel. And this is, of course, a vanilla-based fragrance. Grown up, even antique style vanilla. I see an older gentleman wearing this, almost a granddad type. An archetype of someone that is old and wise, fearless, but very kind. This is the scent for Gandalf. Not Gandalf the White, this is Gandalf the Grey. He's still humanly and humble, very charming and a little sort of rough around the edges, you know. He's got his dirty fingernails and he's always smoking on his pipe. This just suits him, it really does. This vanilla is very, there is sweetness there. There is a sweetness, but it's a very rich, very aged vanilla. I've said before, this smells a bit like a custard tart that's kind of been sat out and it's aging a little bit. You can imagine Gandalf having a custard stain down his thick robes, and it's starting to smell a bit musky and a bit old, and it's mixing with some of that tobacco smoke and a bit of the grubbiness, and there's a smell of the woods in there as well, and it's all a little bit dark. The vanilla is keeping everything a little bit sweeter. That's just him in a nutshell. I mean, this scent is the custard stain on Gandalf's cloak. This is a lovely, edgy, dark but grown-up vanilla with that musky, DNA of Tom Ford, and it is absolutely stunning, and I think it suits Gandalf down to the ground. So that is Vani Fertel. It is the very suave, fucking fabulous. I've always thought of this as being a very smooth and a bit of an executive kind of scent. It's a beautiful mix of tonka bean, sage and leather. There's more going on, but those are the three notes that really stand out. It's ever so creamy, it's slightly aromatic, but it's actually very, very, very sexy. If you don't know the programme, Grimm, in a nutshell, is a fantasy crime series. It's set in Portland. The main star, Nick, is a Grimm. Now, as a Grimm, Nick's ability is to be able to identify that many people are in fact something called a Vesson. And a Vesson is a being that is half animal, half human. Some are good, some are bad. The character I'm basing this fragrance on is somebody called Captain Sean Renard. Not only is Sean Renard the captain of the South Precinct Portland PD, that's hard to say, for those that are interested, he's actually called a Zauer Beast, which means his mum was a Hexen Beast, his dad was a human. He's a male Hexen Beast, which is another term for witch. Now, Sean is quite an elusive character. You're never really sure whether he's good or bad. He tends to bounce from one side to the other depending on what suits his best interest. He's one very smooth character, very sexy as well. He always appears very well turned out, very executive, very clean cut, but he is elusive. He kind of snakes around people while remaining very polished, you know, and I just feel this just suits his character so well. He kind of is effing fabulous. So that is Effing Fabulous by Tom Ford, suited to Captain Sean Renard. So next we have our fifth and final Tom Ford, and it's ombre leather. It's just the freshest, most realistic leather scent. It's got a softness to it, but it's slightly rugged around the edges. It's got a touch of a boozy quality, more like a lager, like a fizzy, sparkling, light lager. But a lovely versatility, and I'm going to match it to a really cool female character from a film called The Brothers Grimm. The film is a gothic fantasy tale of the Brothers Grimm, and they're famous for writing all the scary gothic bedtime stories, and that is where the word Grimm comes from. I'm going to match this fragrance to the character of Angelica. Angelica is like the outcast of the village. She's the cursed one, not a witch, more like a lady of the woods, and she's connected to the magic and the mysteries of the woodlands and the stories. The question is, why am I matching her to a leather fragrance? Well, she is a hunter. First scene that you see her in, she's literally skinning rabbits and making pelts. Yeah, she's a badass, self-sufficient survivor. She would smell like sexy leather. I mean, she's a hunter. She wears a lot of leather. Yeah, Angelica would smell of the beautiful ombre leather from Tom Ford. So the next black bottle is my absolute favourite. It is the one and only Confessions of a Garden Gnome by Ford and Manle. This is such a magical scent to me. The most magical fantasy film of all time for me is Legend. A film that is just brimming with fantasy and fairies and sprites and goblins and unicorns and weird green witches that come flying out of the water, and oh, it's just fantastic. Now this scent to me is a magical garden, one that is as green as it is misty. There's ambergris, you've got something that smells a bit like tobacco in here, it's kind of a bit powdery and smoky. It's the scent of the thick mists that linger over a dewy green garden where lily of the valley and lily grows. There's more mists than green in this fragrance, it's more murky. The freshness of the green and the flowers just peering through. I'm going to scent this fragrance to Una, the mischievous sprite. She kind of moves around like a little beam of light, a bit like Tinkerbell. She does allow herself to appear human-sized in one part of the film, and she's just the most perfect-looking fairy. She would have the scent of the purity and innocence of the white florals, the richness of the rich earth, and definitely that mysterious eeriness from that foggy, fairy-like, dewy quality. So that is Una, and that is Confessions of a Garden Gnome. My next black bottle is Rose Trombone by Lyokushapa Parfums. Well, it's mostly black. This is a boozy, woody rose fragrance. Bright, sharp, fruity red rose, polished sandalwood, and loads of rum. It smells like red lipstick in a jazz club. And actually, it was unintentional, but the name Rose Trombone kind of adds to the fun of that image. I've always thought this scent smells bright red, like shiny, bright red, cartoon red. In fact, no, toon red. A scent I'm going to match to Jessica Rabbit. And we know she's not bad, she's just drawn that way. Yeah, I've always thought that Rose Trombone smelt like glassy, shiny red. It's got a sharp berry sweetness and a kind of glossy feel, which I guess is from the booze. Definitely smells red and edgy. There's nothing soft in this fragrance. It smells like Jessica's bright cartoon red hair, the dress, the lips, and possibly the scent of the nightclub she sings in with the woods and the booze. So that is Lyokushapa Parfums Rose Trombone for the very sexy Jessica Rabbit. We are finally on to the final black bottle, and I think I've definitely saved the best till last. Ho, yo, ho, pirate's life for me. Could you get any more perfectly gothic than this box? Memento Mori, Black Phantom by Killian. I wish the light was better for you all so you can really see the box. This beautiful black sculled coffret is home to the fragrance of Black Phantom. It's a rich, boozy, sweet gourmand. It's very resinous and very, very sticky. Coffee and caramel and a yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum. So Killian's inspiration behind Black Phantom is that of a pirate ship. The aftermath of a pirate party. Pirates would be smelling sticky, sweet and a bit ripe, and everything would be coated in rum. Can't think of a more perfect pirate to match this fragrance to. Our favourite rum-fuelled scallywag with his black sailed ship and his compass that only points north. It's the scent of Jack on a bender on the secret island of Tortuga. There's coffee in here which gives it a sort of earthy richness. Very slight edgy dirtiness maybe. But it's just resinous sugar. Slightly teeth aching, slightly sticky, very sweet, edgy, charming, sexy. It just sums up Jack Sparrow. It actually sums up Johnny Depp, who was just outstanding in that role. So what more can I say? That is Black Phantom by Killian. So those are all my black bottles, and that is the end of this Halloween video. So I'm going to tag two amazing men, two fabulous fragrance reviewers. The first one is Mr. Jon Snow. A YouTube channel which is called Jon Snow. His Instagram account is Scented Snowdrops. Now he's actually the inspiration behind this video. You'll have to go and check out his Game of Thrones fragrance reviews to understand why. He matches fragrances to characters so well, so thank you for this inspiration, John. My second tag is Tom from the channel Ouch110. There aren't many that can describe a fragrance as well as Tom, and I would love to see what gorgeous black bottles he's got in his collection. So guys, you're tagged. Hope you can do it. So on that note, I bid you all a farewell and a happy Halloween. Over and out. And Lord Voldemort. I can't fucking talk. And Lord Voldemort. And Lord Voldemort. And Lord Voldemort's most loyal follower.